Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pam Greensky, and I'm the Director of Operations here at Ikonn. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Supercharge Project Management using Office 365 and OneNote. Here at Ikonn, we're a group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists who are passionate about helping other organizations learn, scale, and grow with a mix of methodology and technology to deliver great results. No matter your company's size, our team specializes in maximizing your business and personal productivity by leveraging the Microsoft technology experience. We offer weekly webinars, which here at Ikonn we refer to as Webinar Wednesdays. We spend about 30 minutes to an hour each week teaching topics ranging from Microsoft Project, Project Server, Project Online, Visio, SharePoint, project, program, and portfolio management, methodology approaches. Upon joining any of our weekly webinars, you'll receive free PDUs. Today's webinar is Supercharge Project Management using Office 365 and OneNote, in which you will receive a half PDU. Before we get started, let's go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. Tim, do we have a screenshot that we usually show right here?
No, I don't have that screenshot. Usually they have the interface. You just use that.
Gotcha. Okay, well, you'll want to make sure that you have joined the webinar in the right listening mode. You can either listen by telephone or you can listen by your computer headset. You can switch that on the panel on the left side of your screen or the right side of your screen. You'll have an opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and we'll address them during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar today. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of my favorite people, the presenter for today's webinar, Tim Runcie, the owner of Ikonn.
Thanks, Pam. A lot of fun here. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday, and I'm excited to have you. Hope you're surviving the polar blast for some places that are getting a lot of cold. This topic that we're going to get into today, as you know, revolves around using the Office 365 or using OneNote either on your desktop or through the 365 portal. And the reason that we wanted to talk a little bit about OneNote is that you're going to keep stumbling over this tool everywhere you go. In fact, you're going to find lots of elements that are embedded. So I'm going to talk about how OneNote is a great tool for project managers, some best practices with that, as well as you're going to find OneNote in different places. We'll definitely use some live demo. I like to make sure people get in and kind of see this as we go through. And as Pam mentioned, if you have any questions, you always can reach out to me later via email. If you happen to be stumbling across this on our Ikonn YouTube channel, feel free to reach out anytime as well. We love taking questions from folks, and especially around methodology and technology. So let's talk about OneNote. And this is kind of funny because I took some time trying to dig through the history, or at least some of the origins from what I remember. And I was actually used to teach Microsoft Office, basically the Windows version, back when Windows version 3.0 and 3.1 came around, and so it's been a long time since I've been working with technology. And I remembered this application that I could use to actually bind my documents together, put notes and text. And so I pulled some screenshots of the old Microsoft Office binder. Now you're going to see this in the basically Windows 95 version and all the way up to 2000 before Microsoft kind of sunset this. But the concept of having a collaboration portal where you can put information, document notes, and text is not new. In fact, if you're using SharePoint, you pretty much get that. Or if you're going to Google Hangouts, there's a lot of tools out there that help people collaborate. But OneNote is a very special place and an element that we can certainly take advantage of. And I'll talk about some of those key elements that support project program and portfolio management either from top to bottom or even in just your daily life. So one of the things that comes up is that when people work in OneNote is that you technically have, if you're using Office 365, a live shared document that people can go in and edit in real time. So sometimes we'll have a planning meeting and we might be kicking out suggestions and solutions and ideas. Instead of everybody talking at the same time, we literally would go into OneNote and just start typing in the document because it's shared with everyone. You'll see this in a few minutes where I'll just kind of show you the options and availability that's out there. Again, think of it as a project manager or a tactical manager that might have a functional team, is that you're collecting information and you're storing it in a notepad or you're writing it down at your desk, is that you really are digitizing information and making it available. You've also got the ability to integrate text, graphics, pictures, recording, and you could do so in a very non-linear fashion, which I'll kind of showcase this as well. Again, OneNote itself, especially in tablet mode, you can sit there and write, and it does a great job in translating your chicken scratch directly into written text. In fact, it can search, read, and understand that. So there's a lot of capabilities there. And again, the idea is that you can even use it in an edit mode to write or draw on top of the document as if you had printed it out, but yet it's still digital. And a fun story, back when I was an Access MVP, I remember meeting with Bill Gates with some of the other MVPs, and we talked about technology. And one of the things that Bill Gates was talking about was wrestling with digital ink, the ability to actually allow people to digitally write. And that was something that they were working on back in the early 2000s. And so you're going to see some of these things pop out and become very practical, very handy, and then having a digital document that both has text, pictures, graphics, notes, spreadsheets, and you can actually write in top of. So again, you've got dress up with stationery, grid lines, meeting minutes. There's a lot of things that are available. So from a PM tool, you're going to find that there's a lot of versatility there. And so some of the best practices that I'm going to go through is we'll talk about what you could do in OneNote. Again, dragging and dropping elements in there, looking at some of the functional elements that are, especially if you have large documentation. And one thing that I'm very excited to use in OneNote is the search capability. In fact, let me just take a moment here. I'm going to go ahead and jump in, and I will bring up OneNote here as a desktop. So I've got a OneNote document, and this is a facilitator's guide. So we do a lot of speaking and teaching, and a lot of times customers say, hey, Tim, can you do a demo, or can AdvisorCon come in and kind of walk us through a proof of concept and give us kind of a free trial demo of the PPM environment? And so there's a guide that helps you kind of capture notes and figure out what you're doing. But if you look here, I've got this document, I've got pictures, I've got text, and you know, as you hover over checking information, looks kind of like a Word document. But very clearly on the right-hand side, you see something else over here that allows me to create what are called pages. So as I create a kind of a contextual environment that says if I'm talking about overview, if I want to go through here, I can highly organize that information. And I can click on different pages where I can annotate, I can put text or comments. Again, a day in the life of how we want to use this from a mobility perspective. I might have a technical guide, and you can see here that I have different platforms in terms of pages where I have information. Of course, if I go back into overview and I want to do a little search here, I might just type in, hey, I'm looking for project, and I start typing that word. And not only is it finding across the different title pages nested directly in there, but if I click on these, it'll take you right to where that information may be. Here's a section on the project from a scheduling desktop all the way up to the enterprise environment. If I backspace over here, you watch how fast this is. If I just say new, you're going to find new section, new title, new visualizations. And I can get into and in and out of that document to find it. So this gives you a great way to give you kind of that non-linear look and feel in terms of that information. So from a best practice and what we can actually leverage for this, I love to take advantage of just kind of capturing notes or information. Now let's play around and have a little fun here, because I know a lot of us all use Outlook, we all use Exchange. You also in many cases take meeting minutes or meeting notes and you put information in terms of where data might be. But let's look at some options that we have in terms of maybe capturing more information. So for example, I'm talking about that draw functionality here where you can see I've got a draw tab. I can come over here and I can lasso text. I can actually choose a pen color or a highlighter color. I might just come over here and say I want to just do some writing here. I'll say, Tim really sucks. There it is. At writing. Good Lord, thank God I don't have a This is with my mouse. I would use a stylus for this. But now if I want to go over here and I'm kind of doing a search for something, and if I type in Tim, you can actually see it's finding where I might have that information. Or if I go to the specific page, you can see where those notes are. And inherently, if I want to actually edit, manage, or undo this, I still have that functionality. So I can click on it, I can stop the editing, and I can modify that. So again, really the idea is that you've got some functionality that you can play with. Again, you can go through there and modify this. Let me show you a couple other quick features that are really helpful, especially from a day in and day out perspective. Now I'm in OneNote right now from a file perspective. We're going to be talking about looking at it through a web portal and a web browser. So the idea, of course, is that if I might be in a meeting and I want to capture information, well, I certainly could drop in a diagram. I think even Ken is doing a Visio presentation right now. So what I like is that you're not limited to what you can pull in or pull out of here. So it becomes a living environment where you can have multiple end users working from it directly. On top of that, let me talk about that audio recording here. So if you haven't seen this before, is that you have the ability to start a recording and actually go through, fires up a recording tab here, where if you're in a meeting, you can actually trigger this from your Outlook basically window, start a recording, and then you can annotate text or type things, and you can quickly zoom to where the text is. So if you have a long meeting and there's not a lot going on that's helpful, what you're able to do is fast forward and jump in and out to that. So literally, we're not just talking about embedding information in terms of files like we saw with the old binder approach. We really are in a position where we can manage and have kind of a living, breathing, live environment. And what I like about this is where you're going to see OneNote pop up. So let's take a look at some of those other options of where that will pop up in different places. So we're going to talk about project management technologies as well as SharePoint. We'll talk about Planner, which if you haven't seen the Office 365 Planner tool, you're going to see Planner, which is built by the Microsoft project team, as a very agile tool, right? It has Kanban boards, you have elements you work with, but again, fully integrated with your OneNote. If you haven't heard, Microsoft just launched something called Teams, so you have Office 365 Teams. Again, still using this technology in terms of making that communication, that artifact of information and making it available. So let's take a peek at a few of these while we go through. So I've kind of started with a desktop environment, getting into some of that data. Let me go to Outlook, because I try not to keep my Outlook open all the time. So let me drag this over, and so here's my day today, and I've got things scheduled. And I've got this meeting here called Prep for Webinar Wednesday. So I'm just going to double-click on this and open up my Webinar Wednesday. You'll also notice here that I've got an option sitting right dab in the middle of that appointment for meeting notes. So if I click on meeting notes, I have the option to either take new notes, or perhaps I may want to share notes with attendees that might be coming to this meeting. So if I click on this, it's going to go out and it's going to take a look at other notebooks that maybe perhaps I'm working or managing with, or if I've even created one that I've started, I can actually get in and add a whole new section here. If you want to, you can always just basically do a search, or basically search through titles of books that you have open, or at the bottom you can create a whole new notebook. Now in this case, I'm just going to click on New Notebooks. Let's assume that you hadn't had anything built so far, and we're going to go ahead and put that out and make it available. So what it's doing is opening up my notebook window. There it is. It says, hey, you got a new notebook. Where do we want to put this? Well, right now I'm going to put it on my OneDrive, and let me double-click on that. In fact, I even have the ability to put it in university or some of the training or products, or I've got this area that says Tim at Work, or I can just say notebook. So let me go to my notebooks. I'm going to call this live demo example. I'll click on create. And so really from my meeting, I may want to capture some of these notes, and I can certainly invite more people so that they can collaborate during the meeting live in this notebook. Right now I'm not going to do that. I'll just click on not now. And what I've just done is I've transitioned into kind of this OneNote page where I can go and create sections, and I have information. Again, we talked about the ability to put in and insert that recording. So a lot of times if you go and look at meeting minutes, people will put them right in the meeting notes, but it might be saved and only you can view that information. So my new section here, I might just want to call this Demo Planning. And I may even want to go ahead and add a few other pages. We're going to talk about saving time, if I can type. And then I might come over here and say, well, we have a few pages I'd like to create here. So we're going to talk about meetings. So I may want to go in and edit under my page. I'll come in here and I can title these each one. So if you click on them, you'll notice I have a section in the middle here. So I'll just go ahead and say, we're going to talk about saving time in meetings. And I'll have documents. And then I might come over here and say I have a second page where I want to work through that. And saving time in planning tasks with MS Project. Okay. So again, the idea is that instead of having this single bit of notes, a note document, or in many cases, a lot of teams, we just take notes in Word, you can tie this information, save it, and connect it directly to your meeting invites, as well as even recording embedded objects and artifacts. And there it is. Here it is. I can see right here, it says, by the way, I'm looking here, which ones do you have? And you can see that live demo example appear directly in my view. Okay, let me show you OneNote from another perspective, and let's talk about some project management tools while we're at it. So as we go through and we look at where we're putting some of that information, one of the areas that we get into, we talk about is project. And so I find this very commonly. In fact, I have a very specific customer in mind right now who loves to put notes in all their tasks. And what we're talking about is the ability for us to actually go in and basically kind of, let me zoom this for you, is put a note associated with a task. There's a column. You can come in here, you click on a task, you can right-click, you go to notes. Well, in terms of tasks slipped due to Scott's vacation or whatever I want to have, is this great text field. But I find periodically that we have people who will actually embed objects, pictures, graphics, other notes. And while it makes sense because when you look at the notes, it'll actually surface that graphic, what ends up happening in projects is it kind of overloads the file, meaning that if you stick a Microsoft Access database in here, you're going to have the size of the Access database embedded inside of the Microsoft project schedule. And this tends to create problems. So what we can do is certainly when you're talking about working in the enterprise environment, whether it's 2016 or Project Online, is that instead of just saving this file, we can go out and we can publish our project. And so we would just save it and publish it into a central repository and connect it to the resource pool. But watch this. If I drill into a project, for example, this health assessment reporting tool, we'll give our screen a section to load up. You'll notice that I'm in a browser view, which I certainly can go in and open this up directly in the client. I can edit that locally. I can edit it in the browser. You may even notice that we've got the ability for us to embed issues, risks, and documents, links basically back to a SharePoint site. But a lot of times what I like to do is say, look, instead of me trying to force everything to be in the schedule itself, what we can do is we can actually go and take a look at the project site itself here. In fact, if I click right on project site, or if you're in the project center and you want to quickly say, hey, look at these issues and risks and documents that I may want to look at, clicking on these will take you right to your SharePoint site, where you can even click on your ellipses, come over here and say, hey, just jump me right to that project site. So let's jump in there, and we'll hop in. And one of the things that comes up very commonly with SharePoint is people will take documents and they create folders or they organize that information. Now this session is about OneNote, not about project, it's not about SharePoint, but we talk about best practices for capturing information. And if you look up here on the left-hand side, you'll see where it says Notebook. So if I click on the notebook, I have embedded right here in SharePoint is a OneNote online notebook that I can create my pages, I can create sections, and I can go through here and click on information. I can capture the same things that we were doing before in terms of elements, but I'm in an online interconnected environment. So whether I'm dealing with the initiation phase or training phase, or I have documentation that I want to work through, I ultimately have information that I get to play with and manage. So again, from a SharePoint to project perspective, we have that. Now, give me a second here. I'm going to close and go right back to SharePoint for just a moment, because very commonly people say, well, Tim, that's nice that we've got that on basically a quick link, but I'm having a library of documents and I want my OneNote information, perhaps it's meeting minutes around the project lifecycle, to be organized a little bit differently. So let me just go right to just the out-of-the-box document library. And as you know, in terms of setting up a view, instead of creating folders, you actually create views where you can organize your document by lifecycle, right? Where we can expand and collapse the details specifically in that environment. So again, I can open or close. Here's our execution. I may want to look at things that are in different life cycle phases. And I get the question periodically that says, hey, how can we actually embed OneNote, but not just have it over here where it's kind of attached to the whole SharePoint site, where we can actually organize it as part of our documentation? Well, first of all, I recommend making views. But if you haven't seen this in the new SharePoint environment where the ribbon is basically kind of disappearing, we have a very clean interface, and I can come over here and say, hey, listen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to set up some alerts or notifications, or I can upload a file, perhaps maybe even just start a new OneNote notebook. In fact, let me do that. I'm going to go ahead and call this my project closeout. I will click on create. Now it's going to drop this into my library. Now remember, my library now actually has this document, so I can come in here and create my sections and titles, and I'll just say closeout, if I can type closeout tasks. And again, it's doing autosave as we go. So as we continue here, let me hop back into that SharePoint environment. So let's go back to our document library. And I've got my documents, and I want to see where is something. And you notice right here it says lifecycle, execution, initiation, hey, party time. What's this in my unassigned section? Well, there it is. And what I like about this is if you use the metadata categories, you can quickly modify your view, kind of go into a quick edit mode, or at least change this view. In fact, if I go back to all documents, is that maybe I need to get this document organized. And what I want to do is do a quick edit, and in more of a spreadsheet fashion, I've got 15 documents I drop in here. I need to organize them differently. So I'm going to come in here. You'll see where it says, here's the columns. Let me just add the text, title, or number, or column types that I'm looking for. But you can go in and you can set your views. You can actually go in and modify what metadata fields that they are, and you can have them fall into the view that you're looking for. So inherently, whether you want to customize a new one or you want to show hide different columns, I'll come down here and I can add this view. I'll just add lifecycle and give it a second here. I'm going to apply it. And now I'm just going to come in here and just say, hey, listen, I can either edit that document, or even if I'm not in selecting that, I can move to my quick edit. Drum roll, please. So it's not quite filling into my view here. I can actually go in and just edit the document. And I would set that metadata field so I can see that. So here we go. Let's put that back in there. And whether I add that column or I add another one to, I have to tweak this view. I'll put it in place. But again, the idea is that I can quickly modify that and then again organize that view. But OneNote now would be organized in terms of my visualization by how I want to see or how I want to modify that information. So again, organizing it, renaming it, functionally changing and modifying its metadata properties are all helpful. And one of the things that you're going to see is instead of having lots on the ribbon, you're going to find this, especially with your files or your OneNote documentations, is that you can always go back in and modify its properties, edit, or do it directly through these ellipses. So again, from a management perspective, you've got to go to option to change that. Okay, let's show you a couple other things, and then we'll kind of move to a transition here, and I'll kind of summarize for you. So again, thinking about OneNote, right? We have this non-linear editing tool that allows us to manage that information. Let's talk about one of the other project management tools. So let me close my project because I always get yelled at if I don't check the back end, and that's a best practice. And then let's go and let's take a look at a planner. So Office 365 Planner and Office 365 Teams are new elements that have appeared. So if I wanted to do a lightweight task management view, it says, hey, look, I want to kick out a task from Microsoft Project. I want to start organizing it, but I don't want to have to do all the heavy lifting. I can come into Planner. So let me open Planner right now, and you can see here's one of my, basically my login Kanban board, if you will, or my Planner hub. And I can see different projects where I can come in and create tasks. If I drill into, say, this marketing project, I can create tasks where I can embed documents, pictures, notes, conversation, due dates. I can drag these cards, if you will, around. But if you look very subtly, what's this right here? It says Notebook. And what this does is in this lightweight task management or work management tool is that you have the ability to create a document that allows you to put information in here. So in this case, somebody dropped a picture in of me. This is when I ran the Denver Marathon. And of course, there's a few extra subtle comments around that. But again, we're talking about creating a collaborative document that we can work with online, share it, link it to our tasks, and also link it back to task management tools, whether it's SharePoint as a document, or for the site itself. For your Planner Hub, you've got that as available as well. Again, using that OneNote tool to help kind of centralize that information. If you haven't heard something about Teams, let me introduce you to Microsoft 365 Teams. And what we're going to do is we'll go through and talk about that. So here it is. I've got Teams. And the idea of Teams is that I can have these conversations around information. So as I'm working here, if I'm working in my activities or I'm looking at the overall data, you can see here I've got the option that says, hey, with a project or with a communication group that I'm having a conversation with, I can actually go out here and I can create a OneNote, or I can type notes. In fact, notes is by default OneNote. This OneNote I actually added, but watch this. This is really neat from a project management perspective. If I'm having a collaborative conversation around a project, and I've got kind of this think of it like a threaded news group, but it's on steroids, and I want to add information to that. Not only can I click on plus and say, hey, listen, I've just spun up a conversation around this new potential project that we're working on or thinking about, but not only can I fire up OneNote, I can even plan and fire up a planner, basically task board, where we can track tasks associated to that. So again, you're seeing that embedded of not just Word and Power BI and Excel, but we have some lightweight tools, including that rich collaborative documentation available. All right, so with that in mind, I wanted to just give everybody a chance to kind of see some of the options that we have, especially with the Kanban and Planner tools and Planner investments. So one of the things that you're going to find in terms of the future wave of what's coming to the Microsoft stack is that you're going to find not only agile program portfolio management, a little bit of lightweight task management, but you're going to see this integrated collaboration across the different applications, meaning that you don't have to run to a SharePoint, maybe a more of a monolithic environment. You can spin up a quick conversation with Teams, capture that note directly with OneNote, and put that in a planner experience, which might be task management, might be a meeting with Outlook, but again, leaving that information from a place where you can kind of go through and see that. Okay, we've done the demo, so I wanted to kind of summarize for you there that, you know, OneNote is a concept about collaboration across documents or sites. This isn't new, right? We've been looking and thinking about this in 1998 and even before that with the Windows 3.11, Windows 95 environment. So the idea is you've got a highly versatile, non-linear ability to kind of search and create content that makes it easy for people to find. And again, the idea is that you can quickly get in, get out, and capture that information wherever you're working, whether it's Microsoft Project, Project Online, dealing with Teams or Planner, or even just directly right in Outlook. And again, you're going to find that Office 365, which is kind of Microsoft's flagship brand, kind of the overall brand, is looking at how to integrate these Office products together to give you a great experience, especially as a project manager. Again, from a summary perspective, I hope these lottery numbers win for you. I'm no guaranteeing that for anyone, but certainly put it out there. And from the rest of this, Pam, let me return that back to you. And as you guys know, if you have any questions about this or the other technologies around project, program, and portfolio management, happy to answer questions about that. Pam, let me turn it back over to you.
That was great, Tim. Thanks for the lotto numbers. Thank you, and thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. We welcome your questions, suggestions, and we want your feedback. So for more information, please contact Tim or myself. And once you exit today's webinar, you'll receive a short survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and submit the survey in order to get your PDUs. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Ikonn, Tim, and myself, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you participate in future webinars. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.